everyone, welcome to the Dixie Belle YouTube channel. I'm Connie from Faff Designs. I'm also one of your brand ambassadors for Dixie Belle Paint. In the video today, I'm going to paint this cool carved piece behind me using Terra Clay Paint. First things first, as always, we're going to give this piece a good scrub. It was actually filthy and I did have to clean it outside first to get rid of some cobwebs, but then I brought it inside and gave it a really good clean with Dixie Belle's White Lightning, and I also sanded some deep scratches out of the top. So for this layered look, I'm going to start with a base of Onyx, which is the black in the Terra Clay Paint line, and I'm painting that all over the piece using a Dixie Belle synthetic brush. I'm also using my continuous mister bottle to spritz a little bit of water to help the paint glide on and get in all of those nooks and crannies of the carved detail. Once everywhere had had one coat of Onyx, I then went in with my second colour, which is called Galaxy. I didn't let the Onyx dry completely, and if this mixes together with that base colour, then I'm fine with that. It's just going to create a deeper shade. Once the piece had had a full coat of Galaxy, I then stippled in some cerulean blue. I started with the top and just pounced this paint on the surface to kind of get a textured look. For the carved detail, I used a very similar technique. I am just lightly pouncing my brush on the surface. I'm using my mister bottle with water in to kind of get the paint to almost melt together, and the idea is that I'm going to build up my layers with the darkest first and then moving towards lighter colours to give the carved detail a really three-dimensional look. So you can see here how I'm not pressing that lighter colour into all of the crevices. I'm just keeping my application of paint really light on the surface, and I'm almost just tapping it on to enhance that carved detail. If I was to press on too hard, the bristles would obviously go into all of the crevices and then we'd just have one continuous colour. And what I really want to do is make this piece really three-dimensional, but really kind of keep it classy and tonal at the same time. The next shade is Malachite, and you can see how little paint that I'm putting on my brush of this colour. So this is a green, and it is a darker colour than the cerulean blue, which I was just applying, but I just wanted to add a little bit more dimension, and this is also going to add a real richness to the colour. So as you can see, I am again just stippling it over the surface. I am not looking for full coverage of this colour at all. It's just going to add a slightly different dimension and bring some more teal tones to the colour. The next colour that I layered over the top was Blue Moon, and again I'm just pouncing it over the surface, and this is just going to push that green to the background. The green's going to still be there, it's going to add that richness and depth to the tone, but it's just not going to be quite so prominent. I'm now going to introduce some highlights with a technique called dry brushing. So dry brushing is basically when you have a very small amount of paint on your brush and you pass it over an area. Normally you do it with a carved detail or three-dimensional detail like on the table, and it's just going to basically act as a highlighter. So you can see how little paint I added onto my brush, and then I'm going to take even more off and rub it on a piece of rag or shop cloth, and that's going to remove even more paint off the bristles. The idea with dry brushing is you just need a very small amount of paint on your brush, and it's just going to act as a highlighter on all the raised surfaces. So once you've taken as much paint off the surface as you possibly can, you're just going to want to pass your brush very lightly over the surface of the area that you want to dry brush. In my case, it's the carved detail around this table. As you can see, I'm not just moving my paintbrush in one direction, I'm moving it all over the place, so front to back, left to right, and kind of swirl marks as well. And that's just going to ensure that I get nice even coverage of the dry brushing technique all over the area. And you can just keep adding paint until you get the level of coverage that you desire for your particular piece. I then decided to seal the layers that I've done, the soft layers that I've built up, and I'm using Dixie Belle's clear coat in satin with a small brush just to get in all the nooks and crannies and make sure that I don't get any pooling or dripping with my top coat. Once the top coat had dried, I then decided I wanted to add a little bit more dry brushing, so I went back in with exactly the same technique as before, also using the colour cerulean blue, and this is just going to basically make all those details pop a little bit more. And because I'd sealed prior to this step, it means that I'm not running any risk of reactivating the layers of paint underneath, because Terra Clay Paint is really easily reactivated when you apply water or another layer of colour over the top of it. So this cerulean blue little bit of dry brushing is just going to be very subtle, but also it's not going to run the risk of mixing with any colours underneath it. And then I felt like the top was a little bit flat looking, so I went back in with the colour Galaxy. I then outlined the very edges in Onyx, which is the black, and gave it a little spritz of water just to help the paint colours merge together. And I used my best down brush and swirl motions just to kind of add shading just around the edges of the top of the table. I then resealed the whole piece just because I'd done the dry brushing and the extra work on the top. I used a foam and dandy brush for the top so that my top coat went on nice and smooth, and I used a brush as before on the rest of the piece. And here's the finished result with a cheeky little zoomed in shot for you so you can see all of that gorgeous detail and the subtle layering. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed this makeover with Terra Clay Paint, and make sure you are subscribed to the Dixie Belle YouTube channel.